Hi, I'm Michael Simpson, and this is my assignment 1 for motion graphics and compositing. I am creating this video podcast to explain the use of motion graphics and compositing within certain movies. The movies that I have chosen to describe the use of motion graphics in is Forest Gump, and later I will compare it with The Mask. The reason for my choice is that both films were released in the same year, 1994, and use similar technology, but the visual effects in them are used to create a different outcome. I'll start off by explaining the term motion graphics and compositing. Motion graphics quite simply means the graphics that move frame by frame. It could be an animation or video footage. Compositing, however, means to combine several pieces of video or images into a single frame. Rotoscoping, which is software used for animation and motion graphics. In the case of Forest Gump, it was used a lot for masking and combining layers to make it seem like different scenes or footage are the same one. When creating a film or animation, you're not supposed to use the entire frame because you have to compensate for cropping the outer edges, so to avoid this we must use action safe areas. These are used to guide people in creating videos. There were scenes that had to be altered to insert Tom Hanks into them, footage of famous people and or historical events that may have originally been filmed 50 or 60 years previously, or even nearly 100 years ago. The first scene to have been altered in this way was the one with the Ku Klux Klan footage. In this scene, Tom is the only new object placed in the older footage. What they had to do was guess the height of the camera, so they could accurately determine where the camera should be raised to. If they didn't get this right, Tom would seem out of proportion to the rest of the footage. The timing also had to be just right, so the people in the background footage didn't charge off through Tom, or where Tom was supposed to be standing. He had to look like he was leading the group of men. Also, they had to get the colours of the scene right, blending the modern footage to the same colour of the old footage. The scene that was most surprising to me that they used visual effects in is the scene with Tom Hanks running down the road being chased by a car. The reason for not using Tom Hanks in this scene is simply because it's too dangerous, and they couldn't use a stuntman because the camera angle was facing Tom. So the solution was to have Tom run down the road and then turn right, and have the car drive down after he exits the scene, with the camera then panning with the car. Rotoscoping and animation and visual effects software was then used to blend Tom and the car onto the same layer, making it look like it happened as one scene. There are several scenes where Tom Hanks has been placed over people that were in the older footage, so as to make it look like Forrest Gump was involved in historical moments. The main problem with using this kind of old footage is that it wasn't meant to be used alongside modern film footage, and it was never meant to be used for effects work. In the case of this footage of Richard Nixon talking to Forrest Gump while holding a plaque, the first thing they would have to do here was to take the man who was receiving the plaque out of the shot using erasing tools and place Tom in his place, making it look like Forrest was receiving the plaque. The hardest part of the Nixon clip was adding Forrest Gump's name and details onto the plaque. This was especially difficult because the camera from this old footage was shaky and Nixon's hands weren't steady either. This doesn't sound very difficult, but it was because of the subtle changes in perspective to the camera. They had to keep the nameplate on the plaque centered and make sure it followed the motion of the actual plaque. In certain parts of the movie, there weren't enough extras to fill the area that the director wanted, so the visual effects team were set to the task of creating the illusion of having the right amount of people. An example of this was the reflecting pool under the Washington Memorial. They created this illusion by standing people in a block in the foreground and capturing and recording the layer, then moving the people around to the next section, making sure not to overlap or leave too much of a gap in between where the other layer will be. They needed to add a better effect to the sky because it wasn't particularly bright, which also meant they had to add a reflection to the reflecting pool. The Mask was released in the same year and used a lot of the same technology, such as rotoscoping. However, there are distinct differences between the visual effects in each film. For example, Forrest Gump's visual effects were used to mask, cover up and blend objects and people into older footage. The Mask, on the other hand, is used to exaggerate the effects of the movie to make them look cartoony and amusing. One of the first and most important CGI moments in the film was when Jim first put on the mask and it was supposed to grab hold of his face. First of all, they got Jim Carrey to act it out on stage, how it was going to happen, Then they created a digital mould of the mask and a digital mould of Jim's head. The mask was then digitally altered to wrap around the mould of Jim Carrey's head. This computer animation is then combined with the footage of Jim Carrey acting the scene out, and then both were blended together with textures added in later. For one of the most memorable scenes in the movie, the visual effects team went for a specific 1940s cartoon look to make Jim Carrey look like the love-starved wolf. To do this, they once again got Jim to act the motions on stage, his arms extended far in front of him to simulate the wolf's mouth. Then they took this footage and erased Jim Carrey's head and created a full CGI version of the wolf's head, using the same techniques as used in Jurassic Park to create the dinosaurs. First, the visual effects team built a wireframe of the wolf's head. After that, the wireframe is then animated to match the actions of Jim Carrey on the stage, so as to keep it in sync with his body. Computer-created skin was then grafted over the wireframe, then extra cartoon elements were added in to contribute to the overall feel of the scene.